Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Colin Douthit. Thanks for being on the show, Colin.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney.
Colin owns a property management and construction company that has experienced 300% growth in 10 months. He likes to bring value to investors before they bring him on. He has 3 engineering degrees and has a professional engineer's license, but has chosen a new path in life. So looking forward to hearing about that, Colin, and just this massive growth for your property management company and you know how you've done that. And but give us a little more about your backstory, in real estate or just getting from 3 engineering degrees. I mean that doesn't happen overnight or without a lot of work. And then but then just taking this new path.
Yeah. No, it didn't happen overnight. So I did two undergrad engineering degrees in college. I got a job right out of school, then got my master's at night, then got my professional engineer's license. Bounced through 4 jobs in 7 years. Got unceremoniously let go from 2 of them, including the last one. And I had already been thinking about real estate, researching real estate, reading, analyzing, just kind of get my mind around the whole industry before I was let go on the last job, and I was under contract on my first property. And I said, you know what, let's see what we can get done here without having to go back to the corporate world. And that was about 3.5 years ago now. So that kind of got us to the point that we are at now.
What kind of property were you focused on at that time, or that you had under contract when you were let go?
Yeah, so I had a 7-unit multifamily building that I was under contract on, and within recent right after I acquired that, went out and bought a couple some single families, some packages from some people that were trying to get out of the game. Over the next 18 to 24 months, we acquired a handful of other units. I had some partners on some stuff, and that's kind of how we started to build up our portfolio to where I could justify not having to go back to the corporate world.
It seems like the property management space has kind of become your focus or your expertise. Is that right?
Yeah, that is.
So why that space? What brought you into focusing on that? Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a roundabout way. So once I got up to the point where I was, self-managing 60, 70 doors, I had to invest in the software, right? Because you just can't manage it all. I guess you could go old school, but I decided to go to software where I could kind of streamline everything. And then from that point, I was like, man, I wonder if I could start third-party managing to generate some additional revenue and maybe just bring on one property manager that could then just manage my assets essentially for free if it was a break-even proposition. Quickly after I started having that thought and discussing it with some people, I got an introduction to somebody that was looking to sell their property management company. And we went down that discussion and getting up through the LOI, and then they decided not to sell. But after reviewing their numbers and just seeing how the company worked, I really started to get a lot more interested in the property management space. And then just decided to build my own and grow it to, whatever I could. And that's kind of where, I got into the business and my passion for the business came from.
So are you focused on a specific type of properties to manage, or size of properties in a specific market, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we're within about an hour radius of anywhere in the Kansas City markets is where we're operating right now. We do work with single family investors, and we work with large multifamily investors. Recently, we've been brought on for a lot of repositioning of assets. So whether it's a single family house that we need to put $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 into and get it back on the market then, or we are getting brought into an apartment complex that's been poorly managed, that needs rehab on every unit and, hundreds of thousands of dollars of work. We've really been brought into all those different spaces just to try to help, value add and manage properties better.
So, let's dive into some of that, the 300% growth in 10 months, and what has caused that? What was that? How did that happen? Everybody dreams of that kind of growth, right? No matter what their
Yeah.
business is. What caused that, and what is that type of growth?
So what's caused that? Probably numerous things. We've been really networking heavy. I've been networking heavy to expand my network of influence among local investors, owners, realtors, to kind of be their go-to guy as much as I can. Additionally, we've been trying to perform at a high level, and I say this to a lot of our investors and to my team, that it seems like the bar for property management is set relatively low on what average performance would be. So if we can perform or communicate better than majority of the other managers out there, that we're going to succeed. And we've had some pretty good feedback from a number of our investors, and when we get feedback that's not positive, we always try to internalize that and figure out, what did we do wrong? How can we make this system better, just to deliver the best product we can, the most professional property management that we can.
Nice. Oh, I love that. So networking heavy though, what did that look like though to reach out? Because it really would matter almost what business you're in. You have to have a network. You got to have, people that you're meeting and people you're adding value to. But what did that look like for you? Finding these people, the owners and realtors, and was there a process to that?
I would really say it started with a couple of people. I started building a relationship with them, trying to bring them some sort of value. And they're like, hey, well, I want to focus on bigger stuff, but I've got some investors that want some smaller properties and are looking for management. Can you help them out? And I helped research and analyze some smaller properties when I still had all the time and the ability and the bandwidth to do that, and was providing them value. Then I got brought in on some of their bigger multifamily deals to start scaling that way. And then those one or two contacts started referring me out to other contacts or making introductions. Oh, hey, you're in this space. Do you know so-and-so? No, I don't know. Okay, well, here's that. And then I go and, have a coffee or a lunch or a drink or something with them and get to know them a little bit better. And just started building my network out that way. I didn't go out intentionally targeting some people. It really happened organically and, through intentional and unintentional efforts, I guess.
So you mentioned performing at a high level, and that you found that the bar was set pretty low. What are a couple ways that you've been able to really shine, or raise that bar?
So part of it's communicating with the owners, communicating with the tenants as well, letting them know what's going on, coming in and having a level of professionalism with trying to deliver accurate data on their reports. Trying to, actively manage their property in a way that I would want it managed if I was an investor, because I am an investor. I was an investor before I was a property manager, which I think may give me a little bit different view than potentially somebody else. But knowing cash flow struggles and knowing, maintenance struggles and how that can impact the dollars, and trying to control those, and then trying to give guidance to owners that isn't always self-serving.
Guidance to owners that it's not always self-serving. So you mentioned right off communication. How do you communicate with owners that that's different than what you've noticed in the industry?
Well, so each owner has an assigned property manager. So our property managers only have a certain number of owners or a certain number of properties. So they have the ability to communicate with them directly. Additionally, all the owners have my cell phone number, so they can call or text me or email me whenever they would like. So I'm available to the owners directly. I'm not just bringing them in through the sale or just through the network. Okay, great, you're in. Don't ever talk to me again. I'm here for them, because a lot of times when I get them brought in, we've worked through this property. I've been there with them through the due diligence process. So we've put together kind of a plan. Okay, we're going to vacate these units. We're going to rehab them. We're going to raise the rents to this. So I am still there helping them execute and build the plan. And then I'm helping coach and communicate with our property managers on the plan and making sure that it gets executed.
So let's talk about some of the struggles or obstacles just managing that kind of growth. Some things you've experienced and just making that growth happen. There's different things that comes up, with any kind of growth like that for any business owner, what are a few things that you've learned or obstacles you've had to conquer?
I think communication is still one of them. I mean, that's one that we have waxed and waned on with the effectiveness of it. Right, there was definitely a point when we were bringing on quite a few doors before we brought on another property manager, where I wasn't communicating effectively with one or two owners, and I started getting some feedback from them on that. And then I was realizing, okay, this is an area that I need to do better on, or I need to delegate. So just having that many new customers coming on, even if it's just a handful of customers that all have a lot of doors, just managing the business, managing the people, and managing the customers. That's where I had, some struggles, and, had to learn to delegate effectively.
Well, elaborate on that a little bit. How you delegated. Did you have to hire people? What was a little bit of that process and handing things like that off?
So some of the responsibilities I handed off to a senior property manager, and I'm like, okay, you're now going to coach some of the new property managers as they're coming in, and you're the first line of defense before it gets to me with an internal question. Delegating, some basic bookkeeping stuff that I was doing, writing checks, paying bills, that sort of thing, delegating that to somebody else in our office, or bringing somebody on to take over that role, because that was sucking up a lot of my time when I could be focusing on something else.
How did you, or what's your team like now, compared to then? How's your team grown, and what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, this time last year, it was just myself and then kind of a part-time assistant. And now we have 2 full-time property managers, a bookkeeper that also has property management history. So as we're capping out the other couple property managers on their max number of units, she's starting to take on units as well. We have a service coordinator or maintenance coordinator that fields and assigns all the calls to our maintenance team. We've got 5 maintenance guys in addition to him. And then we've also got a leasing agent.
Wow. Okay. So that's growth. That's a lot of growth very fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some obstacles now that you're having to overcome with that kind of growth and keeping that communication up and adding more units and all those things as you're just compounding?
Yeah, one of the obstacles that we've been having to overcome most recently is just trying to hire more maintenance personnel. Because every time, you add 100 units, that, is close to one guy for maintenance. And so being able to hire somebody, finding people that'll show up to an interview and then show up to the first day of work, those are the small struggles. But, just so that we don't get behind in maintenance calls, because when you start adding chunks, you add 100 units in a month or 100 units in a day, and then you've got that much more maintenance on the next day. And so just having the personnel to handle that was a struggle. 60 to 90 days ago we were having, and it was, hey, we're starting to get some calls from the tenants that, hey, some of these maintenance, they're not getting communicated with enough, or, they're not getting done as fast as they would like it. And so we heard that, and we're like, okay, let's hire more people. Let's get it done. And now we're at a spot where it's okay. We're on top of things right now. Things are getting done within a couple of days or sooner, depending on how urgent it is, and just maintaining that customer relation with the tenant.
Wow. So how do you add value to the investors, and what does that relationship look like?
So one of the ways I add value is that I am an investor, and I work with them through the due diligence process. And I'll tell this to any investor. I was like, bring me on the due diligence process. Even if you don't buy the property, I'm still going to be here for you guys. You will get my time. You'll get my attention. Let's do some analysis on the rents, the rent rolls, fees that we can add. Let's look at their profit and loss statement to see where we can improve that and see if that can improve your offer. Additionally, we have a construction company. We're Atlas Property Management. We have Atlas Construction. I have a partner in Atlas Construction. He kind of handles all the field operations. And so I'll bring him in, and we will then start to, we'll walk the property. We can put together rehab estimates per unit or for the whole building, depending on what needs to be done. So we can give you guys construction estimates. We can give the investors rent estimates and performance metrics, and hopefully, give them an accurate picture on what it's going to cost them and what they're going to get in income.
That is so valuable. I know we've had, our management teams are such a big part of our due diligence process, and just the reports that they provide and helping us with leasing audits and things like that. I mean, it's so valuable, so valuable.
Yeah.
And especially if they're going to be managing this property long term for us. It's great that they're learning all that stuff about the property right off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know what we're walking into. And also, this is a small thing, but I tell all the investors, I'm like, before you close, let me see all the leases and let me see your closing statement just so we can make sure you're getting the correct amount of prorated rents and security deposits. Because that's a small thing. And if it's on a 4-unit building, that's not a big deal. But, we recently had it happen on a 20-unit where they didn't bring us in. And, they've had to go back to the seller twice for thousands of dollars that was, not accounted for in the leases, or, wasn't accounted for at closing. And so, yeah, hey, there's more security deposits. Oh, by the way, nobody told us, but this one tenant still had 7 months of prepaid rent floating out there.
Wow.
And we didn't figure it out until we got the leases a week after we started managing the property.
Any other, horror stories that we can learn from, if you all, as you all have been called in to help investors with these properties?
If you're going to be doing a big value add and you're going to take a C- property up to a mid to upper C, be prepared for a lot of vacancies. I mean, we're on 2 particular properties that we've been having to do large repositions in. Now we're at 50% vacancy on one. Now, granted, a chunk of those properties are on the market now that we've done the rehab, and that was always the goal. But, we're having to go through evictions. We're dealing with, pistols and pit bulls and drugs and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, oh, buddy, this isn't all it's cracked up to be sometimes. But, when we have the end in sight, we know what it can be. And, once you kind of make that turn, we've made it on the first property and we're getting close to making it on the second property, to where it's like, okay, now we've just got 1 or 2 stragglers of the old guard, but you're in, the deferred maintenance on a property that has that kind of tenant and those kind of issues is probably going to be bigger than you estimate off the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would hope that our management team could help us understand what to expect there. Especially they're going to understand the market most likely better than we do, just by managing tons of other units there.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about that just a little bit. Let's say, a lot of the listeners are probably, value add type of investors and are looking for deals like that or that business plan. Anything that any words of wisdom you can add from being able to take that Class C property and make it into the C plus or B minus, where you've seen people have mistakes, or even things they just don't know to expect, like you just mentioned, the pistols and pit bulls and things like that are you don't know to expect or to account for. But any other ways that we could be more prepared, or even just with the relationship with the management company?
Yeah, I mean, make sure that your management company knows what they're getting into to an extent. I mean, we've definitely been surprised at points. Get the opportunity to walk the units, talk to the current management company. But even talking to the current management company doesn't give you the full picture, because this 34-unit property that we took over, where we're dealing with, drugs and guns and aggressive dogs and all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, it was a professional property management company here in Kansas City that, that has a large footprint, and we're like, okay, well, this should be decent, but it was an absolute disaster. And, people were behind on rents. People were living there that weren't on leases, no pet policy in place. Nobody was getting evicted. And, we walked into it and, I don't know why the law was this way, but one guy broke another guy's orbital socket, right? This younger guy, maybe in his 40s, broke this 70-year-old guy's orbital socket in a fight in the hallway or outside. And then he's not even on the lease, the guy that broke it, and we can't get rid of him.
Wow. What do you do?
I mean,
what do you do to get rid of him? Call the police?
Yeah, well, he got arrested, but until he gets 2 offenses, he can't get a restraining order. So he was still allowed in the building. And it was just like, this is ridiculous. So, and finally, and then the courts opened back up. This was all during COVID. So then the courts opened back up. So we get possession of the unit probably next week. But it's been like this long ongoing saga, and it's just like, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And, we have so many more tenants or problems with tenants that we didn't place. If we can place the tenants, our collections are higher, our drama's less, our maintenance requests are less, everything. But we take over property like that, and everybody's like, well, all the tenants like, well, welcome to the Thunderdome because the people before you sucked.
Speaking of COVID, let's definitely just spend a couple minutes there. And why don't you give us a highlight of kind of what happened with vacancy and income and, just numerous things there that over the last, few months, right? 3 or 4 months, and then into, kind of what you see, happening over the next few months.
Yeah. So we've been brought in a lot of reposition properties right now. So everybody's like, well, what was your collections during COVID? I'm like, I have a hard time telling because our collections were low because we were taking over these properties that were poorly managed to begin with. We had, non-paying tenants on properties that we took over 1 week before the whole world got shut down. They're not going to start paying now. So
Right.
It's hard. But generally, if we exclude those tenants that were bad tenants before, we had pretty decent collections all in all. We're pretty happy. We were, 95% during COVID. We worked with tenants. We got some of them on payment plans. We were able to use some security deposits and get them switched over to a Rhino policy if they were towards the end of their lease or on month to month, and get them put on a new lease. Rhino is a security deposit insurance or security deposit alternative. So we were able to use their security deposit to help them out there. But generally it's been okay. We had a lot of units that we were completing rehabs on during COVID. And so once those rehabs got completed, we started showing them, but they still got leased up. We had a ton of showings. Our occupancy has been increasing during the whole COVID.
Nice. So what do you see happening or any, forecasting in the next couple of months?
Mm-hmm. Most people have gone back to work here in Kansas City. We have just a handful of tenants that are still having issues. And, at this point, we're either trying to work with them, and if they just stop communicating with us, then we're going to have to send them to the attorney because, we have to manage this property appropriately. But if you're not going to communicate with us, we don't really have any other options at that point. Going forwards, people are working now. Most people are working. So I think that we're going to get back to a little bit. Life is normal from the income side of things. I don't think life is not normal in terms of, how we enter the units or, going to Home Depot to pick up supplies or whatever that is. But I think as far as, getting the units occupied, keeping them occupied, and collecting rent, we're going to be back to normal.
What's been the hardest part of this real estate journey for you, Colin, or maybe even just growing this management company?
Just learning from the school of hard knocks. I've never really been afraid of failure, but sometimes when you do stuff and it is a failure, just having to take your licks and be like, okay, well, I learned from that one. Let's get up and make sure I don't do that again. So,
Cool.
I've learned that more on my personal investments probably than I have through the property management company, just because, I spent a couple of years learning on my own properties before I started a management company.
How do you, working with this many investors, I like to ask people, how do you prepare for a potential downturn or, and getting to see as many properties as you do, or are there specific things that you like to see an owner have in place or have done or certain numbers to say, okay, he's prepared for, for the next downturn or, some kind of shortfall?
Yeah. My advice is, to these investors, especially the ones that want to do value add, is don't go buy the most expensive property. And not even that, the most expensive rent. Don't buy a property that has the highest rents in town, because you're going to be the first one that's either going to have to cut the rent amount or you're going to have to, have vacancies. So if you can just buy a working class property that people are coming up through and people are coming down to, you're probably going to see a pretty good rent collection and a pretty good occupancy.
What's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to our business?
Recently, within the last month or 6 weeks, we implemented Monday.com, project management software. And we use that for when we have units go vacant. And that allows the whole team to communicate on. So we'll have, it'll have myself, it'll have the property manager, it'll have our leasing agent, it'll have our maintenance coordinator, it'll have construction brought in, and we're all on this, and we built out, a bunch of steps. So, as it goes through, then it pings the next person line, hey, this is you're up, because we were figuring out that was a bottleneck we were having was unit turns, and just making sure everything was getting done in a timely manner. And we were getting security deposit inspections done and security deposit work done within 30 days to get that money returned or partially returned. So that was what we've implemented recently. That's helped us systematize more things.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Networking and hustle, I guess. I've just been real with people. I haven't tried to sell them on something that we're not.
How do you like to give back?
We're really involved in our church, so I like to work with the youth there and some missions work as well.
Wow. Well, Colin, I'm grateful for your time and just your story and your hustle, like you talked about, and just making this happen. And just congratulations on the growth and really raising the bar for the just property management in general. I know that will pay off long term, no doubt about it. And so tell the listeners, though, how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah. So if you want to reach me directly, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Colin Douthit. You could reach out to our website, www.atlas.rentals. Either of those ways you can get a hold of me, and be glad to chat with anybody if they have any questions.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.